Hi, Cassidy.
Very happy and excited to bring you into our life. Just going to love you very much and give you a very nice life, and you're going to have a great grandmother and a sister. Aunt.
In the Cooper family, I'm your great Aunt Gail.
I'm your great
Uncle
Ron.
I'm your cemetery Tom.
I have a special mom and dad, and we love them both.
Hi Cassidy, it's your Auntie Lee. You're going to be really spoiled if you have a great family, great mom and grandma and grandmas and grandpas and father. Well, of course we know that. And it's a great family all around.
Have you ever wondered what your ancestors were like? Whether they looked like you or not, whether they had the same sense of humor, enjoyed the same foods, had the same hobbies. Were they shy or were they outgoing? Were they good artists, musicians, or athletes? We unfortunately don't have the opportunity to meet our ancestors face to face. But what if we could meet them through other people? My name is Cassidy Stephenson, and I've been interested in genealogy ever since I was in middle school. I think my interest comes from the fact that I have a really small family, so I always wanted to learn more about the family that lived before me. And I was the youngest member of my church genealogy group, actually, and they were the ones that convinced me to get a DNA test that my mom and my grandma also got, and we learned more about our ancestors and where we came from. I took a break from genealogy in high school and in my early college years to focus on schoolwork. And my junior year of college is when I met my fourth cousin, Martzi Matza, and I learned about her through my mom, and she is also interested in genealogy like me, and she spent some time in Italy connecting with distant cousins of ours that are related to a person that I am going to talk about later, Espartero Carletti, who was my great-great-grandfather. I am glad that I connected with Marcy because she has become more like a first cousin to me than a fourth cousin because I only have one first cousin. And through my research on sites like Ancestry, MyHeritage, and Family Tree DNA, I have connected with distant cousins in Sweden, Germany, Italy, Scotland, and I continue to meet new family members all the time. And out of my entire family, these are the stories of the two people I found most interesting that I never got to meet. Espartero Carletti, my great-great-grandfather, and Caleb Harrison, my great-great-grandfather. This is a picture of my great-grandfather, Waldemar Otto Johannes Grosnick. He enlisted in the U.S. Army in 1942, but was medically discharged days before the Battle of Normandy due to arthritis of the spine from an injury sustained in childhood. This is a picture of my great-great-great-grandfather, Caspar Molter, who arrived in Chicago from Germany in the late 1800s. This is a picture of my grandmother and I with Caspar Molter's monument at St. Luke's Cemetery in Chicago. On the far left is a picture of my great-grandmother, Evelyn Klotz Grosnick. She met my great-grandpa Wally at Valparaiso, and she was an accomplished opera singer. On the far left is another picture of my great-grandpa Wally. Next to him is a picture of Espartero, his first wife Teresina, and their first daughter Assunta. The statue is what an Italian guard would have looked like when Espartero held that position. This is a picture of my grandma, Judy Grosnick Harrison. I've called her Amma since age 1.5. I have been interested in my maternal grandfather's side of the family for quite some time now. I was super close with him before he died of Parkinson's in 2009. I wasn't interested in genealogy yet, and he unfortunately wasn't able to speak well because of Parkinson's complications, so I never got to hear stories about his family from his perspective. I hope to be doing his family justice by creating this documentary and making him proud of everything I've accomplished or will accomplish in the future. This is the story of my great-great-grandfather, Espartero Carletti. Espartero Carletti was born on November 3, 1878 in Città di Castello, Italy, to Pietro and Diarmida. He had 5 brothers and 1 sister. The Carlettis were well known in Città di Castello because they were famous shoemakers. At age 14, Espartero was sent to Rome to train as a guard to the King of Italy. He served under Umberto I and possibly also Victor Emmanuel III. He was sent to train as a guard because of his tall stature of around 6'4", which is very tall for an Italian. Espartero married Teresina Torioli in 1902, and they both came to the United States and New York in 1905. Their first child, Assunta, was born in 1908, before they had 2 previous stillborns, one of whom was named Lucia. Espartero and Teresina then settled in Stroud, Pennsylvania before coming to Chicago, where their second daughter, Ada, was born in 1915. Ada grew up to become a sign language interpreter at Moody Bible Institute. She even interpreted an event with Billy Graham. This is a picture of her and her husband, Chester. She died of diabetes complications in 1980 at the age of 64 and had many cats. Teresina died from tuberculosis in 1916 at age 44. Ada was only a year old and Sue was only 8. Espartero allegedly had a short-lived marriage with Florima Rubio before marrying his third wife, Elvira Rossi, in 1921. Elvira and Espartero had 1 child together, Peter, in 1922. Elvira had a son from a previous relationship named Marcello, but he was back in Italy. Espartero traveled back to Italy with Assunta to get Marcello as a surprise for Elvira, for which she was very grateful for. Marcello later was killed in action in World War II, and his remains were never found. Marcello was reported missing in action on July 28, 1944. He was likely killed by Japanese soldiers at the Battle of Aitape in Papua New Guinea. They even memorialized a plaque for him at his family's residence on Seminary Avenue in Chicago. His name is also memorialized on the walls of the missing at Manila American Cemetery in the Philippines. Marcello's sudden death devastated his siblings so much, even though they were not blood related. His half-sibling, Peter, did not find out they were half-siblings until his mother's death. Assunta, called Sue by her friends and family, would pray that her only grandson, Todd, would not be sent off to war and killed in battle. Sue believed that it is Marcello whose remains lie in the tomb of the unknown soldier. Espartero co-owned Columbus Nut Company with his best friend, Ross Milianta, on Larrabee Street. It was the largest pecan shelling industry in Chicago at the time. The Great Depression unfortunately shut the business down. Espartero died at the young age of 51 on October 18, 1930, from a stroke. It was rumored to be from the stress of his business shutting down. The Carletti legacy lives on after Espartero's death because they're in the history books in Città di Castello. The name underlined is Camillo Carletti, which is Espartero's grandfather. They are famous for being famous shoemakers, or calzolai in Italian. We are on the way to Chicago. We left about 2.5 hours ago. We should get there at around 11:45. That's what it's looking like right about now. Some of you may be wondering why we are driving up to Chicago. So when I came up with this idea of doing a movie about my interesting family members. It was pre-COVID, so I was actually planning to go to Pennsylvania and to Italy to film for this movie, but obviously you can't do that right now because we would have to fly to Pennsylvania and to Italy. So we are going up to Chicago for the day to film the old houses that Caleb used to live in, because the ones that Espatera used to live in are torn down, replaced by like a Target. So we are going to see their graves too, so you'll see that footage. I got a COVID test before coming, so I am negative, and we're taking all safety precautions. She's vaccinated, so we're being safe while doing this little disclaimer. We are on the way to 1719 North Sedgwick Street, which is the address that Caleb Harrison listed on his World War I card. We don't know if it's the same exact house, but
Guess
it
we'll
might
find
be.
out.
Yeah, we'll see if... I know the house is still there. I don't know if it's the same house, but we'll see at least the location in which he lived. We are at 1719 North Sedgwick Street, and there's some old houses right here, but none of them are 1719. We think that 1719 is this language academy right here, unfortunately. So a bit of a disappointment, but this is the area of which Caleb Harrison lived during World War I. Going to another disappointment, which is Espartero's house, which is now a Target.
Yep, I saw it from the road. My gosh.
His house is right next door to the nut company that he owned with his best friend, Ross Milianta. As you can see, there's a bunch of construction, and this is like still residential stuff,
These are all new.
but they're newer. Let's see, 700
How close he
feet.
was to the John Hancock.
700 feet on our right.
The destination is on your right.
Yep.
1312 North Larrabee Street.
Here's Espartero's house. It's Target and construction. And it looks like where the nut company was is now looks like a gym. We are on Sunnyside Avenue, and this is the house that my grandpa Roger Harrison grew up in with his parents, Sue and Bob. This is the house where my grandpa Roger Harrison grew up in. We just arrived at Acacia Park Cemetery in Norwood Park. I had to go into the office because I didn't know Caleb Harrison's grave location. And when I gave them his name, they were like, he was cremated and returned to the funeral home. So he has no headstone. We're not sure where his ashes went exactly, or who has them, or if they're buried with somebody. But, yep. Just another, day in the life. Another mystery about Caleb Harrison. We're going to go to Espartero's grave. Now, I know there's a headstone for that.
No wonder why they didn't have a grave marker.
Yep, that's probably why the grave marker wasn't online. But, yeah, because I found Caleb on Find a Grave, and it didn't have a grave location, so it's like, oh, okay, well, maybe there isn't, like, maybe nobody has the location, didn't put it in there. Come to find out, he was cremated, so I don't know why it said Acacia Park Cemetery. I guess that's just where he was cremated. I don't know. Life's full of mysteries. We finally found Espartero's grave after searching through what seemed like 1,000 graves. My cousin Marcy texted me what it looked like, so it narrowed it down a little. But when we finally found it, we were overjoyed because we had been searching for like an hour. It was a huge headstone. I'm 6 feet tall, so there is me next to it, so it was unlike the other graves there. This was one of the only graves that we saw that was in Italian. It has nato and morto on it, which means birth and death. Espartero, his first wife Teresina, and his third wife Elvira are all buried here. It has Carletti on the bottom, and also on the bottom it says Riposano in pace, which means rest in peace in Italian. We are both very worn out from trying to find Espartero's grave. We are currently looking for Al Capone's grave, but I don't think we'll find it because of all these graves.
Yeah, we're in letter.
Yeah, so we are just going to leave.
Trying to find the exit.
And we're trying to find a way to leave. We also got to visit Ridgewood Cemetery, which is where my grandpa Roger is buried. We hadn't been there in way too long of a time, and I thought it was way overdue that we should visit him. So we got to see him and his grandma Mamie and his parents Bob and Sue.
Is Virginia Mecha Schick. Okay, so, and I am Cecilia Milianta's daughter. Cecilia Seal is the closest one to Susie Carletti.
Okay.
Okay, he was Carletti. I mean, he was Carletti, the guy. You know?
Which Carletti are we talking about? They're all Carletti.
I know, but that's what he was called by my mother and her parents.
Oh my gosh, that's
Remember
amazing.
his first name. So Ross and Carletti, they didn't come to America together. They met here. They met in Chicago. He's not Ventimiglia.
Mm-mm.
No, he's Northern Italian, isn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he was hanging out with the Sicilians, which is.
I know.
She immediately said, "Oh my God, he was Grandpa's best friend."
Yeah, and he died so young. Yeah.
So young.
Yeah. There was supposedly in the family a statue, a gold statue of Espartero. Made up of him. Yeah,
Some sort of an
like
award,
in uniform. I don't know if it was an award. You do.
I don't remember it being an award, but because he was considered the model guard, like every guard after him had to meet his physical dimensions, I guess. But it was this beautiful glazed statue, but it was beautiful, and it was, Espartero and all his regalia.
Can you talk to us about what it was like visiting Città di Castello and seeing where he grew up and all, like Espartero, where he lived and where he was born?
Yeah. Okay. So it is a medieval town. So it's like everything there is just old, and it's very charming. So it's really cool atmosphere to be in. It's a small town. It's in Perugia, which is, or like right outside of Perugia in Umbria.
Did they have, like, when you met people who met Espartero, did they have any like good memories of him, or like how did they describe him?
So our cousin Teresa, who at that time, now this was like almost 20 years ago, she was in her 70s. So I don't know if she's still alive. She remembered meeting him. And so she was a little girl at the time, and he was the charmer of the family because he was a guard to the King of Italy. So they thought very highly of him. And then he had moved to America, and he would come back and visit. And when he'd come back and visit, he would bring them toys like dolls. And so they really loved when he would come visit. And the families rode back and forth between the US and here, and Italy.
Were you told any stories about Espartero, like growing up?
So when he passed, my grandfather was not very old. So he didn't have a lot of stories other than, that he was the guard to the King of Italy, and he was very tall, and you're very proud to be here in America. He had that the painting that I sent you a picture of was in the dining room. So it was like he ate with us every time we ate. So he was very proud of his dad, but he didn't have a whole lot of stories because he died when he was little.
I think that's all the questions I had. So thank you for answering them and talking
You're
to me.
welcome. Anytime.
Most people have fond memories and pictures of their loved ones. However, that is not the case for my great-great-grandfather, Caleb Harrison. There are no memories of him of those who are alive, and there are only 2 photos that we've come across. He is one of the most interesting people I've found on my family tree, but he is also one of the most mysterious and controversial. Unlike Espartero, whose life was boasted about by many family members, Caleb is practically non-existent, not appearing in baby books or wedding announcements or anything. She is the daughter of Roberta Harrison, which is Caleb's granddaughter. Roberta was born 1936, 2 years before Caleb died.
The only thing I had ever heard about, the only thing that time it was ever mentioned anything about this man was my grandpa Bob did not like to travel. He never went anywhere, ever. My grandma did. And my mom had said, well, it's because when he was a kid, his dad was a politician and they were on the train traveling all the time. That was the only mention of him ever. And it's just so sad to me that they obviously had no relationship then once he left the country, it seems.
It has been extremely difficult researching the Harrison family because of how common a surname it is, and in addition to Caleb's mysterious life. This is a snippet from a book called The Book of Biographies that I found. It is talking about George W. Harrison, which is Caleb's uncle, and it says that George traced his ancestry back to General John Harrison, who was in charge of the execution of King Charles I. It also talks about that he was later beheaded by Charles II because of what he did. And it talks about how they were banished to Virginia. It has always been a family rumor that we are related to the presidents. And in this snippet, it also says that one of the brothers is an ancestor of President Benjamin Harrison. This is another snippet that I found from the same book, and it says that we are related by marriage to Mary Boone Maurer, which is a relative of Daniel Boone. Because Harrison is such a common name, we can't say 100% that we are related to these people, but I have, when I created the family tree, all the same names popped up, so it could be possible. I have written down what I'm going to say for this portion of so many times because I keep finding new information about Caleb's mysterious life. Caleb Leroy Harrison was born outside of Reading, Pennsylvania in Monocacy Station, Union Township on September 20th, 1879 to William Henry Harrison, not the president, and Sarah Jane Faucht. He had an older brother, George Harrison, not the Beatle, and a younger brother, William Henry, also not the president, and a younger sister, Blanche. Blanche actually remained in contact with my grandmother after Caleb's death. This is a handkerchief that she gave her. Union Township was established in 1753 by proceedings in the Berks County of Quarter Sections. The township was formed through the union of portions of Robeson Township and Coventry Township. The land area of Union Township, like most of Berks County, was purchased in the early 1700s through an existing treaty between the local Native Americans, known as the Lenape or Delaware Indians, and the sons of William Penn. The lands area adjacent to the Schuylkill River and the Hay Creek provided productive land for farming. It was known to be a Quaker community, and there is even a record I found of Caleb's grandfather, also named Caleb, attending a Quaker meeting. Caleb has been a family name for many generations, even in the late 1600s when they arrived in Pennsylvania from England, and it continues to be a family name now. Caleb married Mamie Jane Knappenberger in Berks County, Pennsylvania on January 6, 1906. Their only child, Robert Caleb Ford Harrison, was later born on August 11, 1906 in the same city. Caleb and his family moved to Chicago 10 years later. It is not entirely known why the Harrisons came to Chicago. A theory is that it was for Caleb's political career. Other political positions that Caleb ran for before coming to Chicago include Pennsylvania General Assembly in 1908, U.S. House of Representatives in 1910, Berks County, Pennsylvania County Controller in 1911, U.S. House of Representatives again in 1912, and Governor of Pennsylvania in 1914. He was defeated in all of the races. Caleb was also the vice presidential candidate for the Socialist Labor Party in 1916 alongside his running mate Arthur Reimer. Caleb obviously did not win the election, having only gotten 14,000 votes. Caleb has had a few run-ins with the law because of his politics. He toured the United States with Reimer, and they both got arrested for giving speeches in the streets without permission in Montana and Pennsylvania. Caleb also did lectures around Moline, Illinois that included topics such as his opposition to militarism and the high cost of living. He was employed by the Communist Party to give these lectures to spread their radical program. Harrison left the Socialist Labor Party after the Russian Revolution of 1917 and joined the Communist Party of America in 1921. He was a leader in the Friends of Soviet Russia organization in 1921 and editor of the Weekly People for a short time. Caleb was also elected National Secretary of the American Labor Alliance. In 1921, he was sent to Canada as a Communist International, or Comintern, representative with direct ties to Moscow. In Canada, he went under the pseudonym Henry Atwood. He helped form the Communist Party of Canada in a secret meeting at a barn in Guelph, Ontario, with armed guards on the outside. Caleb was arrested at the Bridgman Convention in August 1922, along with 14 others, including Communist Party USA leader C.E. Ruthenberg. Caleb, along with the others, posed as a singing society to not raise suspicion. However, an FBI agent attended their meetings about the planning of Bridgman Convention and informed authorities. Those arrested faced $10,000 bails. The Communist Party promoted fundraising amongst the community to release those captured. Caleb was the first executive secretary of the Workers' Party of America. He would later step down to make way for C.E. Ruthenberg after he was newly released from prison. Caleb completely disappears from the radar in 1923 until his death in 1938 in Chicago. His trial was set for 1925, but it never happened. He is not even on the 1930 census. A theory could be that he moved to Canada and lived under the pseudonym Henry Atwood for a while until his death. His death certificate is covered with birth date unknown, family names unknown. It is highly likely that he disassociated himself from his family and only lived a 15-minute walk away from them at the time of his death. The location of his ashes remains a mystery unsolved. During Caleb's disappearance, his only child Robert married Assunta Carletti in 1933 and had their first child Roberta in 1936. Caleb died on June 8, 1938 at 58 years old, 2 years after Roberta was born, and 6 years before his second grandchild Roger was born. No one that knew him or even heard stories about him is living. Just because someone passes away, it does not mean that their story should stop living on. Everyone has a story, and they all deserve to be told.
Cassidy, sure going to have you always in our hearts, and we hope that you always send pictures that your mom and dad will take, and visit us, and we'll do the same.
In the Cubs song?
Go, Cubs, go. Go, Cubs, go. Hey, Chicago, what do you say? Here comes the dino today.
How old are you, Cassidy?
2,
Pretty soon you're going to be what?
3.
3. Yep.